Hello and welcome to the next StableNet Snapshot video. Today we're going to be looking at workflow jobs in action, specifically device compliance check and configuration. This video is a follow-up to the video we posted last month about workflow jobs in general, and also the 4 workflow jobs that are shipped with StableNet in a default installation. Today's video is going to be about a workflow job we specifically wrote for one customer, and should give you some ideas what's possible with workflow jobs. Maybe you have some that you want to you want some support with. Or maybe you're going to have something that's similar, maybe something radically different. But just to show you what we have, what we can do, and how we can adapt these workflow jobs to suit your individual needs. In the first part, I'm going to introduce some of the basics of StableNet that are needed to understand workflow jobs, and then I'll show you the workflow job. So here's my StableNet instance, 10.0.3, which is the latest service release. And StableNet in general is able to do backups of devices. I already did some backups, and today I'm concerned with the content of these backups. Namely, I want to make sure that at any given time, there's certain lines present in the backup. So today, for example, I want to check that the logging file line here is present in my backup, and that another line is not present. And this line it defines the public SNMP community. So both are valid use cases. Possibly you don't want to have a public SNMP community because of security reasons. And maybe you want to log into a specific server. So those would be the use cases that we'll look at today. Just a couple examples. So that's the reason why this line should be here. Of course, a very specific use case. We're going to check whether these lines are available in the backups. So in order to do that, I've created a policy checking job. A policy checking job in StableNet uses the backups made by backup jobs and check whether given lines or patterns are present in the backups that were done. And if I open this policy checking job, then you see that there are, in fact, in this case, 2 snippets. One is checking the logging line, as I already said. And one is taking that, checking that there's no public SNMP community set. These snippets are very straightforward. I'm not going to open them here, but they just serve to check this, and that they're not checking. We're not going to check here advanced buttons. It's possible to check some of the advanced buttons, such as structure of the configuration file and different parts, but this is just a normal string matching. So is a line present or not without regular expressions or other enhancements. As I already did execute this job against my backups, you can see here what the results were. I'll just open the results. I selected select the job. Now you can see that I have some devices in my inventory. And for example, the Dallas router here was compliant to the logging requirement. You can see it here that the logging line is present, but it was not compliant to the SNMP requirement because it actually includes a line that the public SNMP community asset is in its backup, and this goes for all the devices you can see here. There are devices which are not compliant in those snippets, for example, the Berlin switch, and there are also devices which have no configuration at all because the backup was not made for these devices. And as I already said, these non-compliant devices can pose problems to my network. Of course, it could be a security problem if there's a public SNMP community. It may also be a problem if the logging is not set up correctly. And to fix that, I normally would have to go to the configuration job and start a specific configuration job. Not only that, I'd have to adapt the configuration job for the devices which were not compliant. That normally means I would, instead of using the accept none filter, I would note that, for example, tell us that the switch in Berlin was not compliant to the logging requirement. And I would have to select all the devices that are not compliant here in the list, including the Berlin switch, and then I would have to execute a job manually. Of course, I can also run the job and give it time intervals, for example, every 2 hours, and that would also make sure that the configuration is repaired for the devices, but then it might happen as well that I repair devices that don't require it. So for example, the Dallas router was compliant to the log requirement. It may happen in some cases that if I add an identical log file or an identical entry to a backup, the device may throw an error. So technically the device is compliant to my snippet, or all devices are then compliant to my snippet. But some of them may be throwing an error due to or for the configuration because I wouldn't have created a duplicate entry. And so Both approaches to fix that aren't really ideal, and that's really where the workflow job comes in and where the advantage really lies. So in this case, that's exactly what it does. It automates this task I described, checks the results of one policy check job, executes the required configuration jobs to fix the problem, and these configuration jobs are only executed for those devices which have failed the policy checking job. And if I look at the top analyzer for the latest run of today, you can see, let me make this bigger, that there were 2 snippets checked by the policy tag job, and 5 devices with violations were found, and 1 device without any violation was found. This was the Hong Kong router. And then you can see all the jobs that were executed. There was a job disabling the public SNMP community, and this job was executed for these devices, and an add logger job. So the logging requirement was executed for these devices. And you see that Dallas is not present here because it was compliant to the logging requirement. This one's present here because it fails the SNMP requirement. Let's look at how the job is configured. And here comes one of the specifications of our customers, because when we made this, he wanted to keep his view at the top here very simple. So we designed, along with the customer, you just give the job ID of the policy check job and those results that have to be used. In this case, this is the 1117 job. You saw that some moments ago in the policy checking job tab. And then we can give configuration files, which hold the remaining part of the configuration. And of course, it's possible to do this also with the UI or the user interface, but the customer wanted to have a file because he had some reasons that required him to have a file for handling. It was going to be easier. Having the UI is completely customizable like this to your specific workflow jobs. Okay, then let's look into the configuration file of the job. The configuration file is in this file represented here, the XML, and it's fairly short. In this case, it consists of 2 parts. And this is always the case, even if you have more snippets and more jobs to be executed. The first part is the snippet job list, which means here I list all the snippets I want to check. And I list the configuration jobs that should be executed if the snippet fails. This means if the logging snippet with this name fails for any device, then the configuration job for this ID should be executed. And the same goes for no public SNMP community snippet. And in the second part, I configure my jobs. It's also highly customizable. Here, the customer wanted to have the possibility to switch off the device credentials and use the device credentials stored in the job, or use the device credentials stored in the devices of the inventory itself. And this can be changed with these properties. And then he also wanted a possibility to adjust the filter of the device, which in this case means that, well, as you know, every job has a device filter. So this configuration job has a device filter, and the property clear device filter here means that the device filter of the job is cleared completely before it's deployed for the failed devices. And if this would be false, then the device filter would not be cleared, but the failed devices were appended to the filter with an end operator. As I already said, this was also a customization that was wanted by one of our customers. Maybe wouldn't be relevant for you, but the workflow jobs can be designed to do similar things depending on what your needs are. This is something where we do offer our support to help you develop these workflow jobs to your specific needs, criteria, and what it is you're looking for. So that's about it for today. Just wanted to show a quick example of how they can be customized, the workflow jobs, to facilitate certain automated processes. Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking your time. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and check out some of the other content that we've posted recently. All right, have fun with StableNet.